All right. I don't want to wait too long here, so we're going to get started. Thank you all for attending. My name is John Gestel. I am our investor relations coordinator here at Royalty Exchange. I have with me Rob Bernhardt. He's our corporate counsel. He typically joins me on these calls. We've got a lot to cover today. We're going to be going over the Latin music markets since, the Super Bowl. Um, Quickly, we're going to go over royalty returns that we've seen on Royalty Exchange, and then we're also going to be talking a bit about AI and how that's evolving in the music markets. So first things first, our newest opportunity just went up yesterday is for Nengo Flow, Meek Mill, MO3, and more songwriter royalties. This one is a Latin catalog. We bring it up because Nengo Flow is known to be a frequent collaborator with Bad Bunny, who just did the Super Bowl halftime show on Sunday, for those of you who watched it. Um, so obviously a lot of opportunity there. So we always want to highlight new opportunities that we have. This one's looks pretty good and is fairly reachable for most people. Earnings are growing. Latin music market as of 2024 was the fastest growing music market in the world at a 22.5% increase over the year prior. It's been like 15 years consistently growing, which is astounding. 2025 figures aren't in yet. That's normally reported by the IFPI, also Illuminate. They're so two great macro music industry publications. So we'll be keen to see those numbers. Last quarterly percentage growth for Latin markets I looked at was around 5%. So again, that's trending towards 20% annual, but we'll see how it looks. Um, Notable because it's primarily a streaming market, and honestly, a large portion of that is actually premium streaming subscribers, which I was surprised to see. But about 87.8% of that market is streaming. So streaming is really strong there. And yeah, this catalog looks really good. With Bad Bunny's performance, notably that will bring more audiences to his catalog, which provides a lot of opportunity for Nango Flow's catalog to grow as well. So take a look at that one. We hope you like it. If you have questions, of course, reach out. Let us know what you think. And yeah, that one's live now. So go take a look. Next, let's look at our ongoing royalty performance. So every year, um, we look at general returns, basically how catalogs that are held have performed. Um, this is really interesting to see just because you would expect maybe some fluctuations here, but really we see consistent returns for our average catalog. Life of Right's around 12.5%. Um, but importantly, fluctuations are really within 1% for all cohorts of catalogs. Um, but 2024 year ending was 12.43% average. 2025 was 12.49. So hardly any movement there. Um, Our 10 years did drop a little bit, but I do want to caveat that and that I had to exclude a handful of 10-year deals that have done extremely well, so much so that they were really throwing off the calculations. One catalog in particular had like a 15,000% annual return. Um, so yeah, take that with a grain of salt. And then our 30 years, you can see there's only 2 years worth of data there. Those are relatively new asset types that we've offered on Royalty Exchange, so not quite as much of a data pool. So any fluctuations there will be a little bit outsized compared to the other data pools. This analysis had about 1,000 catalogs in it. I think it was like 970. Um, the full analysis went to our All Access members. So if you're an All Access member, you can take a look at that. This is just kind of a quick overview highlight. Um, Next, let's talk about AI. Uh, every every quarter when we have this webinar, we always touch on it. It's top of mind for most people, and obviously the implications for music are large. I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, have seen some headline about AI music and fraud that's been happening on streaming services, the pushback from publishers, things like that. Last quarter's webinar, we looked at a bunch of 2026 um, coming litigation, different rules, licenses that were, being put together. So far in January of 2026, we've already seen some of that stuff materialize. Notably, these AI license deals that I've outlined here between Universal and Udio. Udio is a platform for creating licensed AI music effectively and streaming it. It's a new platform, so it's not exactly out yet, but they reached a deal with Universal. Um, Universal has penned a lot of agreements with different DSPs about AI in particular. So it's looking like those licenses are starting to materialize. Warner Music also reached one with Suno. For those of you who aren't familiar with Suno, they're basically a platform where individuals can create full songs using AI. So that includes lyrics, vocals, instrumentals, all done from text prompts. Um, so that reaching an agreement is also very notable. We'll see if Suno reaches agreements with the other publishers. I expect they will. But Warner Music and Suno did reach their licensing agreement. And then there's this new company called Clay Vision Inc., and they reached agreement with pretty much everybody. Um, so I pulled the whole list of companies that they'd reached licensing agreements with: UMG, Universal Music Publishing, Sony Music Entertainment, Sony Music Publishing, Warner Music Group, and Warner Chappell Music. For those of you who don't know, that's the publishing and record label side for all the majors. And basically, what Clay is they're a product where users can change the genre or style of a song that they're listening to through a streaming service. It's not really active yet, um, but that's kind of what they do. Point here being that AI licensing agreements are materializing, and quickly, which is, I guess, good and bad. Good because it should lead to more royalty streams and royalty revenue streams rather, for different holdings. Um, but we'll see how it shakes out and what piece of the pie AI generated music takes in the streaming world. That's We'll get to that a little bit here, but that's kind of the big question on everyone's mind is how is that going to dilute the royalty pool? Um, so to protect against those things, a lot of different regions of the world are already putting together rights reservations mechanics. The UK, as of December, had the Copyright and Artificial Intelligence Statement of Progress under Section 137 Data Act. Um, Basically, it requires that AI providers respect copyright opt-outs. The opt-out is a big part of it, so that if an artist doesn't want their music used in AI training or LLMs, they don't have to be. Um, and then also high-level data reporting to prove that those opt-outs are being honored. That's a really big piece that we're seeing a lot of consistency in across requirements. Um, the high-level reporting is going to be a big part of it. California, effective January 1, had the AB 213 Training Data Transparency Act. Again, requires AI developers to publicly disclose high-level information about training data and content source. And then New York also penned one that's effective later this year. Um, Basically, again, requiring disclosure of AI generated performers, content, etc. Question here. Do you see cannibalization risk to the pure play platforms from the new Gen AI platforms? And how do you factor that into your valuations? Is there an argument that it is a net positive to rights holders, i.e. accretive? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think I think inevitably there will be some cannibalization risk just because the way royalties are paid out, it's based on plays per song in a general pie that gets split up. So if people are indulging that music, it will inevitably take from that pie. That being said, I think that people still tie a lot to artists that they know. Um, so I don't think that it will do too much as far as impacting ongoing royalties. I don't think so. But we'll have to see. I mean, I think it kind of comes down to how good the AI music is. One thing that I talk when I have conversations with people about this topic in particular is the idea of art being a human construct on, the human experience and all that. I think that people cling to that quite a bit. Um, so I don't think that AI music will pull from that just because I think that people still hold the art of it. Um, but we'll have to see. As of now, we aren't factoring it into our valuations because we don't know what these new revenue streams are going to look like and how these licenses are going to work exactly. It's all so very new. Um, and honestly, the way people consume music doesn't really change that much. So having more content out there won't move the needle too tremendously, as far as, people listening to what they like. In 10, 20 years, that may be different. Um, but for now, what we've seen is it's not hugely tangible. Again, like take all this with a grain of salt, right? Like it's all so new, we don't really know how consumption habits will change, if they change at all. Um, so we'll have to see. Um, there is an argument that it is net positive to rights holders for a couple different ways that we aren't exactly touching on here. A big one is the production tools that become available to artists, a lot of that being AI driven. Just because something is AI adjacent doesn't mean that it's, AI slop, as it were, right? I'm sure everyone here is familiar with, the AI images and things that are like very clearly done by an AI engine. Um, that's not exactly the same as, some artist who uses an AI engine to help master their finished product, right? And you could argue that that's a net positive to rights holders because they can create better content at less cost. So it actually empowers the independent artist quite a bit. Um, then there's also the argument for reporting, right? And more accuracy in reporting. If you have a really sophisticated AI engine that's making sure that rights and royalties are flowing the right ways, or tracking plays that were otherwise not picked up, that can lead to a positive to rights holders at the end as the end user because they're getting more royalties, right? Because the tracking is better. Um, so yeah, there's definitely an argument for that. Um, Again, we'll have to see, but I think it's definitely has a positive element. Um, that can help artists of all sizes. Um, oh yeah, we will see. Now to that point, let's talk about streaming services, because obviously they have a lot at stake. Um, Pretty much every streaming service has put out some statement or some tool to help track and or stop AI music that was put onto their platform. Bandcamp, they straight up banned AI generated music. Deezer created a tool that's, they detected over 13 million AI tracks in their repertoire, um, which has now been commercialized, and they are licensing that out to different users as well. Spotify, obviously, super, super strict enforcement. Now, not perfect, but they do a lot to ensure that crediting is done the right way and AI disclosures are in place. Um, Really, the goal, as I understand it, is protecting artists. Um, Voice and style is the focus that I keep seeing. Some of you may recall, like a couple artists had impersonations done of them via AI that they came out and said, "No, this is not me," whatever. Again, the use of AI slop is kind of the big word. Um, But streaming services are doing what they can with the technology at hand to kind of guard against that. In 2024, some of you may have read about this musician in North Carolina who effectively committed $10 million worth of streaming fraud from AI music that was from nowhere. And that case just settled, I think, like in the last 6 months, something like that. Um, but that was spearheaded by Spotify. Most of these DSPs are trying to be careful. Um, Again, what shape it takes, we don't know. Um, And I think that the upcoming CRB royalty rates, which are going to be addressed in 2027, will have a big shift towards AI use in streaming mechanicals and all that, and how that gets paid out to rights holders in the end. Some of you may recall we were talking about that a couple years ago. The CRB, the Copyright Royalty Board, they set streaming mechanical royalty rates, which can be pretty material for streaming catalogs. So with that upcoming conversation, this is going to be a big piece of that. Um, Big takeaways, new revenue streams um, with new technologies creates new opportunities for royalty revenue streams. The AI licenses being put together, assuming that that reporting and that compensation to artists stays at a high level, that can lead to more royalty streams. That's great. Great for rights holders. Um, Protections from DSPs, the anti-impersonation, anti-spam. Um, Basically, the ensuring the opt-in, opt-out rules are maintained for artists. And then, like I was speaking about a minute ago, transparency and reporting. Um, that high level requirement that all these different suits and bills and acts are requiring is going to be a big part of it too. Um, Hopefully, it's robust. For those of you who are familiar with music industry reporting, it's not always super transparent. It's getting better every year, but hopefully, this demand for higher transparency does translate to better reporting across all catalogs. Again, things we'll have to see, um, but there's promise, which is a good thing. So that's all I had for AI stuff. Those are really the big, most recent items. Again, most of this just a couple weeks ago happening. Now for this portion, we are going to go to the submitted questions. But if those of you have live questions, I encourage you to keep submitting them. We've got about 40 submitted questions here that we're going to go through. We're just going to go through them one at a time. A lot of standard stuff here, so hopefully we can move through it pretty quickly. Uh, we'll just go from the top and work our way down. First one here, once I invest, all I have to do is collect the royalty checks. Yep, that's right. We do this as passive as possible for the investor. So you buy it, we just pay you. Um, our offerings are designed to be passive, so no copyright control or ownership or anything like that. We handle all the assignment paperwork, we handle everything. All you really got to do is buy it and then set up your payment information, and we'll pay you. So yeah, designed to be passive. How are the returns working? Well, reference to our slide from earlier. Pretty good. They're all doing pretty good across the board. Um, yeah, between 8 and 13%, depending on what you're getting and how long you're holding it for. Pretty solid. Pretty solid returns here. I don't understand where I can invest a few of my money in listings that are cheaper. Yeah, so we don't do fractionalized offerings, as I'm sure many of you are aware. So any catalog that you purchase has to be purchased in its entirety. Um, so depending on your budget is really going to be how you determine what you can invest in. And then it's going to be looking at the overall price. There are filters on the exchange where you can filter out the more expensive stuff, focus on the less expensive stuff. So that's going to be your best bet. Um, but ultimately, every transaction does have to be a one-to-one transaction, one buyer, one seller. So you've got to find that cheap asset and then win it. That's how you do it. Interested in investing for business purposes. So if by business purposes you mean licensing and pursuing sync opportunities, that's not something you'll be able to do with us because again, this is all designed to be passive. Now, if you are talking about buying under a business or a purchase entity, that you absolutely can do. Um, you just have to let us know how you want to house the asset you purchased, and we'll take care of the paperwork. So yeah, very doable for the latter, not so doable for the former. Curious about valuations and how they typically change as songs age. General rule of thumb that people tend towards is the older the catalog, the less volatile the earnings tend to be. That line sits somewhere around like the 7 year dollar age metric. So when you get older than 7 years, purchase multiples tend to go higher because you have that kind of proven track record of earnings. We could talk about the general consumption trend of new music where it spikes in the early years and then drops off as it ages and then flattens out as it kind of develops its consistent listenership. That's what we really try and measure with the age and why people justify the higher multiples. But specifics about valuations are really up to you and what you value. Obviously, things that are recurring revenue streams like streaming, or like placements in a movie that's going to get a lot of replayability. Those are things to look for versus like advertising that's going to have a 6 month lifespan or radio earnings that may be short-lived. Um, and then weighing that stuff appropriately against the earnings and ensuring that you aren't exposing yourself to high levels of risk. It's really what it comes down to. Can you explain step by step how to invest in music royalties and what the investor will get at the end? That's kind of a loaded question. We kind of just talked about it a little bit with valuations. How to invest in music royalties on royalty exchange, make offers to purchase on a catalog, win that catalog, and then what you get at the end are the royalties generated by that catalog as outlined on the listing. Um, you'll notice that different catalogs will have different rights included. There's always going to be a table that highlights what specific rights are being paid. And then look at the raw data file. That's going to outline everything too. That's just all the data that we have available for every listing. It's going to be on that raw data file, downloadable on every asset page. So yeah, I would say take a look at that. Where can I find data about past trading and results? Yeah, all the past deals you can view on the site. Um, yeah, just click on the past deals page and you can look through everything. You won't exactly get ongoing performance. You could go find the relist for a specific asset and then kind of see how it's done since its purchase. But it's a little bit of a manual process. Question here, how is the ownership formed and documented? Is there a risk of royalty exchange failing? What would happen to all the copyright owners? Rob, you want to talk about uh, contracts, ownership, and royalty exchange?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So the instrument of transfer is a purchase agreement that will be between the seller and the investor. There'll also be some sort of letter of direction or assignment document, depending on who the royalty payor is. They will have the seller assign those royalties to Royalty Exchange. Then Royalty Exchange will pay the royalties through to the investor. So it's kind of a two-step process in that respect.
Cool. And then for royalty exchange failing, um, in the termination clause of our accounting agreements, because we act as the administrator for royalty assets. Should royalty exchange no longer be able to act as the administrator, we would set you up with a new one. Or, if we all died in a ball of fire and there is no royalty exchange, there's limited power of attorney in that clause as well. That would enable you to set the assignment of the royalties yourself. Um, like Rob was talking about, that purchase agreement exists outside of our existence because it's a direct contract between you and the seller. So no matter what happens to us, your ownership is intact. You just have to set up the administration. It's really what it comes down to. Now, all of those contract terms are actually freely viewable because we have standardized contracts for everything. So both the purchase agreements as well as the accounting agreements are viewable on our terms of use page. Just go there. You can go take a look whenever you want. And if you got questions, let us know. Happy to answer. But yeah, you're protected in any event. It'd just be one step of changing assignment if it were necessary. But no signs for that as of now. Uh, Next one here. I wanted to know how much did you need to start to invest in master recordings? Um, for the sound recording side, I mean, it would be about the same as the publishing side. It's really no difference. So how much you would need depends on the asset you want to buy, what it comes down to in the end. Who measures and collects the royalties for payments to the royalty owner? So that is done by the royalty collection agency from whichever company is overseeing the royalties. When you're looking at one of our listings, you'll see um, in that table of rights included, will include the royalty payor. Most often, you're going to see a performers' rights organization like ASCAP or BMI, which are massive, massive entities. Um, they oversee the performance royalty specifically. They are regulated entities. Or it'll be something like, Universal Music or Warner Music, or one of the majors, something like that. So they collect and pay out the royalties to their rights holders. Um, so those would be the companies that you're asking about. Um, Now, for our purposes, because we act as the admin, all the catalogs under our umbrella flow to us, and then we pay them out to the rights holders as required based on the purchase agreements, the accounting agreements, etc. Is there any withholding tax applied? If you are an international buyer, there would be, in which case we would be required to apply withholding tax based on the tax treaty between the US and wherever. Um, So look at what that tax treaty is. A lot of places are 0%, but some are higher. Um, but that would be done automatically. It's kind of unavoidable. Any others before I move on here? Okay. We will talk briefly on tax stuff. The cash flow isn't considered ECI. What do you mean by ECI? Effectively connected income. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Rob, do you know? It might be a question for our accounting team.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah, I'll get back to you. Shoot me an email at investors@royaltyexchange.com so that I can get that answered for you. Okay, moving on here. Is there support if needed? Yes, of course. Um, we're very reachable. If you have questions, reach out. Are royalties paid directly by the source or through royalty exchange? They're paid through royalty exchange. Wanting to be a fly on the wall, great. What are a range of solid fixed term investment options in rock music with starting prices from $1 to $10,000? Um, I don't know. Rock music is pretty heavily sought after. We don't see a lot of it. Really, because in most cases, rock music is generated by a band, and those band members are typically the rights holders. So we don't see a ton of it. And then when we do see it, whether it's under a fixed return or fixed term structure, kind of remains to be seen. We get them every now and again. The most common one I'd see is like the Grateful Dead stuff that comes up. Um, but stuff that's only 10 grand is pretty rare. Um, Generally, I mean, that's really the low end of like the pricing spectrum that we see on Royalty Exchange. You might find some, but for a fixed return structure, it'll probably be higher. Um, your best bet's going to be using keyword searches on the exchange, but will probably be hit or miss. Uh, I would say keep an eye on the emails we send out for new opportunities because that's where you're going to see that stuff. Um, New assets go live around the same time every day, around 11 a.m. Mountain Time. So if you checked like shortly after then, that's when you'd see the new opportunities. So if anything that fits your criteria comes up, you'd see it. Um, but yeah, that's a tough one. Question here: any follow-up on the fund royalty exchange was considering starting, and that was discussed on the last call? Um, no real updates for now. We did close a first round, and there may be a second round. We will see. So I don't have much I can share there yet. Um, we we will let you all know when there is an update and an opportunity there. Um, so we'll see. Does Royalty Exchange charge fees for distributing the cash flow? And if so, is it more efficient for the investors to buy larger royalty slices? We actually do not charge an admin fee. Our admin service is a free service we provide. Obviously, there are some transfer costs that are outside of our control that you may see, especially if you're an international investor, things like currency conversion, whatever. Um, Generally speaking, yes, it is going to be more efficient to buy larger royalty slices because I believe those fees are largely fixed, especially if we're doing like a transfer, like a wire transfer. Um, so yeah, that any kind of fee you might see could be variable depending on the structure. We can do US dollar transfers to a US dollar account via a wire in some cases, depending on the account, in which case it's a flat fee. Otherwise, I believe there's a percentage. I think it's I think it's low. I think it's like 1% or less. But again, that's things that's charged from outside of us that we have really no control over. So like some intermediary bank that might charge a fee, something like that. We charge no fees. Right. What kind of royalties can I purchase? Mostly music, some film and TV shows. You'll also find Listerine royalties, which are really popular. Um, but we like to say we focus on most intellectual property. Every now and again, we'll have book publishing royalties. A couple years ago, we did royalties that were generated by standardized tests using articles, which was super interesting. We've done jewelry design royalties. So yeah, bunch of stuff. The bulk of it's going to be music just because it's the largest, most established royalty ecosystem. Um, so that's really why. Next one, payout date. Payout dates will fluctuate depending on which company's overseeing the royalty payments, when they pay out, um, and the frequency that they pay out. Some companies will pay monthly, some will pay just once a year. Our accounting terms hold a 30-day window from when we receive the royalties to process and pay them out to ensure accuracy. Right now, our average processing time is around 9 days, if I remember correctly, Rob. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it's getting better every month. But right now, that's our average. Next question here. What are some tax structure strategies that could set up these assets that would be more beneficial? So you can amortize the cash flows to get some tax advantages. We actually have an article on our blog page about amortizing royalties, which provides a couple examples of flat 10-year amortization schedules, things like that. Um, Talk to your tax advisor about tax advantages too. And then our FAQ page as well, we reference the tax code in question when you're talking to your tax advisor. We are not tax advisors. It's illegal for us to provide tax advice, but we can point you in the right direction. That's where you're going to want to look. Um, on the Royalty Exchange website, I see royalties sold out for the entire catalog of an artist. Isn't it possible to invest in only one song of an artist? How does an artist auction his song beforehand? Um, so if you're seeing something that was previously sold on Royalty Exchange, that's why it would be in the past deals. It is possible for an artist to include just one track in their catalog. For example, right now you can buy royalties from Fall Out Boy for just their song Centuries, which is a cute, huge song. So when we're working with an artist in constructing one of these sales, they have a say in what they want to sell. Now, we obviously have parameters and criteria for what we need to see before we'll move forward with the deal. But if they're just want to sell one song and that one song fits our our rules, then we could go up with that one song. Um, so that's an option for them. Um, in which case, it'd be an option for you to invest in just the one song. Um, I hope that answers your question. If there's more to that I didn't answer, let me know, and we'll keep moving here. What is the minimum dollar amount for investment on average? Like I was saying before, probably around 10,000. You might find some stuff up for less, something that maybe previously sold and has declined a bunch. Um, but before we'll consider any catalog, it needs to reach a certain earnings threshold before we'll go up with it. Typically, it's like between 3 and 5K earned in the last 12 months. That's like our current range right now. And that will also depend on which company's providing the royalty payments because they'll have different rules as well around what they'll allow that we have to follow for royalty assignment purposes. So that's kind of why that minimum is where it is. Say something's earning 5K a year, it's really young, so you pay a 2x multiple on it. There you're at 10K right there. Um, so that's rough range, but it really depends. How do you source royalties offered on your platform? Yeah, this is a good question. Um, a lot of it is artists who are looking to sell who have heard of us. We are the biggest royalty market in the world, so we're a natural place for people to go to. Um, we also have full-time staff who reaches out, works with artists. We get a lot of referrals from artists who had a good experience with us. So a lot of different ways, but this is kind of the golden question for brokers and other platforms. How do we get them? So can't exactly give the full answer. An artist doesn't have any one song in a catalog. There are many songs that artists worked on. If he wants to sell publishing rights out for a song that he's not released before, how does that work? So for an unreleased work, we cannot list it because it doesn't have any royalties earned. Um, that is a key criteria before we'll go up with any catalog. Uh, since we are working specifically with the royalty earnings, we need that data to build evaluations, build our listings. If you look at our listings, everything is built around the historical royalty earning data. So for unreleased works, we won't consider it at all because it has no earnings history. Uh, what new and exciting innovations are coming to the platform? Are auctions dead? Well, we're doing a big push right now, kind of like a facelift of the site. Um, so expect to see some UI UX improvements in the coming quarter and throughout the year. That's the latest stuff. We'll see how robust it is. I have high hopes, and things are already starting to change a little bit if you pay attention. But yeah, that's the latest. Auctions, formal auctions are dead, for lack of a better word. But our current offering system is kind of like a hybrid offer and compromise and auction system because we have our final offers, which basically is like an auction, where there's a 24-hour period for people to make their final offers on a catalog. It's a way for us to ensure highest bidder wins and best price discovery. Um, so not totally dead, just based on how the system currently works. But formal auctions, yeah, we don't do those anymore. If an artist has a publishing deal with a label, how do you ensure all the parties are accounted for, including the label? So for any artist that we're working with, part of our due diligence requires us speaking with the royalty payer, whether it's the label, the publisher, whoever. Um, so they would be part of the discussion because they're part of the royalty stream. Um, Rob, do you want to, touch on due diligence and how we cover that stuff?
Sure. So before any asset can be put on the marketplace, the seller will contact us. Um, we will obtain their royalty statements directly from the royalty payor, and we'll connect with the royalty payor to ensure that there's no encumbrances or advances or any issues with the account that would need to be addressed before this could actually be assigned. So we kind of take that responsibility up front to make sure the asset can be assigned. And then once we've verified that everything's good to go, that's when we can actually put the listing up on the marketplace.
Yeah. And that will extend to things like ensuring that all the splits are accounted for in contracts, the producer agreements are there, et cetera. So it's extensive. There's a lot that they have to clear before we'll go up with anything. Next one here. What other ways can I invest in music catalogs besides publishing? How can I buy small cap catalogs and turn over a profit? Yeah. So other ways to invest in music catalogs besides publishing, I mean, you could buy the master side, the sound recording. Um, since there's the publishing and the sound recording, that's really your two options. Um, at least on Royalty Exchange. As far as buying small cap catalogs, turning a profit, I mean, that's really going to come down to the price that you end up paying for the catalog and then how it performs. Um, so you could find a small cap catalog that's still from a global superstar, right? If it's just some smaller songwriter's small portion of those royalties. Um, so if that performs well, you could turn a profit on that pretty easily. We have plenty of investors on the platform who buy young catalogs, hold them for a couple years, and then sell them for a profit. Um, so it's a not uncommon strategy. But yeah, in the end, it's going to come down to the price that you pay and how it does over time. Those are the key metrics. Feel free to explain the process of placing a bid. Yeah, super straightforward. When you go to a listing, there's going to be a big button that says make offer. You'll also have an option to buy at list price if a list price is set. If you opt for the list price option, that will immediately kick off final offers. Otherwise, you can just place a bid and make an offer to that rights holder. So that will put your offer up on the listing for a 72-hour period for the seller to consider. You cannot withdraw that offer. It's binding. It's there for 72 hours. And if the seller accepts it, then we start AFO, final offers. Otherwise, they can make you a counter offer, in which case you can then decide if you want to accept their counter offer or counter back. And that's kind of our offer and compromise portion of the listings. So that way you can kind of negotiate with the seller to reach kind of an agreement. Um, so those are the two ways that you can do it. Just remember that any offer that you place is binding and can't be withdrawn. And if you would accept an offer, that you are bound to that acceptance. Obviously, final offers can change things, but everything is binding. Does investing in royalties mean I get to collect a percentage of their entire streaming revenue from DSPs, or are there other types of royalties that we can claim? So that will be outlined on the included rights for any given listing. Generally, streaming is part of that. It's part of most royalty types. Um, but you'll be able to see on the listing and through the raw data as well what different sources are providing royalty generation. Streaming is just very common. Um, Generally, it's just a portion of the overall revenue because it's one rights holder's stake, right? So it's not like you're buying 100% of the royalties generated by the song. It's just that one rights holder's um, portion. Next one here. Do you see revenue from streaming increasing in terms of payout from Spotify and other DSPs? Probably, probably. Um, for two reasons. First, access to streaming is getting into more people's hands, notably emerging markets like Latin market, um, and then also, smartphones and access to that stuff getting to more people. Streaming rates, also royalty rates, since those are re-examined every 5 years, those should stay consistent and ideally should increase, keeping up with inflation, things like that. Um, And then, yeah, just more people listening to music. The music market's grown every year for the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years. I think it's for the overall global publishing music. And yeah, that's all from streaming largely. So expect that to grow just as the music industry grows. Um, yeah, that's our expectation, but we're also kind of bullish on this stuff. So take it with a grain of salt and, do your own research too. Like you may feel differently based on what you see, but all signs point to lots of growth. And we see it every year as we get, updates on macro streaming numbers, macro um, music publishing data, stuff like that. Will music AI influence the trade in music rights? I don't think so. Because again, I think people are still going to be drawn to the music that they like and the artists that they like. I don't think that's going to change. Um, an AI artist can't put on a concert, and that's another big draw for people, and that inspires a lot of streaming for people if they're going to a show, releasing new music, stuff like that. At least AI artists can't yet put on a concert, but we'll see how the future goes. Interested in general insights and future demand and returns. Well, we've already talked about returns a bunch, and we've talked about future demand a bunch. We'll just move on from that one. Copyright rulings slash trends as it pertains to AI generated music slash creation. Again, we've covered that. I would reference the different items that we've gone over in this webinar. This is a new investment type for me. How do you make any educated decisions on what to invest in? Yeah, good question. The key items that we look at in determining risk and volatility are things like the age of the catalog, the streaming sources of the catalog, the artist and what they are doing matters too. Um, that kind of context is not something we provide on our listings because we focus on the financials and the hard data. But doing more research on whether an artist is actively touring, if they just released a new album, all of that can inform whether or not you should be bullish or not on a given catalog. Um, you may even be considering for an older catalog whether or not radio is something to consider, right? If something's an older, more established work and it's got a big portion of earnings coming from radio, well, that's not likely a declining royalty stream like it would be for a young catalog, right? If you were to consider a radio station that focuses on hits from the 90s, for example, and so you're looking at a catalog from the 90s, that is very likely being played on radio stations from that era, right? Or even for a genre. There's lots of different um, shapes that can take. So understanding how those sources apply to the catalog you're looking at matter as well. And if you want specifics or a deeper dive into that, look at our Ultimate Guide to Buying Royalties. It's free to download on Royalty Exchange. It's a great resource. Um, Question here. Suppose an underground artist wishes to share his publishing rights with the investors. What all should a new artist do to get to work with this platform? You can't. Yeah, you can't. We would not connect you with those investors directly, nor would we look at um, again unreleased works. So that we wouldn't look at that. Next one here. What is the basics and investors side of the industry? What is considered a good practice? Yeah, we kind of just covered that. Again, look at our Ultimate Guide to Buying Royalties. Make sure you're familiar with how this stuff works and how the royalty ecosystem works. Um, yeah, educate yourself. That's really the best way. Look at the raw data file, do your due diligence. Those are all good practices. Can you please explain standing orders? I see it on listings and I read the blog post, but I'm more confused. Yeah, so standing orders was a program that we offered a number of years ago. Um, it was designed to be an automated investing tool. So we have a built-in valuation tool for artists where they can connect their royalty accounts and get an analysis done. The standing orders allowed investors to put in the earnings metrics they would want to see in a catalog and their, purchase limits, and then the standing orders would make automatic offers on their behalf to someone who ran their catalog through our analysis tool. And so we saw a number of transactions happen through that system. Um, that's what it was. We have since discontinued it because the offers were rigid. There was no negotiation. They were often very conservative because it was an investor making a blind offer. Um, so you may see it in the historical transactions of a given listing, but that's what it was. Um, it's no longer active, so there's no way to interact with the standing orders as of now. Maybe some way we'll find out a way to make it work better, but that's what it was. If an artist has a catalog already and his streams are rolling in, is it not possible for him to work with the platform? It is, depending on what the royalty earnings are. Um, that's what it comes down to in the end. If their earnings meet our criteria for a listing, then yeah, we're happy to take a look. Just connect the royalties and yeah, we'll work with you on it. But if their earnings don't meet our criteria, then there's not a whole lot we can do. Different platforms have different requirements around what they'll allow for a royalty assignment, and we have to follow those rules. So, for example, um, a digital distributor, they need to see, like $20,000 earned in the last year before they'll consider an assignment. Other companies will be less rigid. Like ASCAP is like right now we need to see like between 3 and 5K, right? So depending on where the royalties are coming from, or like by that I mean being paid from, matter. So yeah, if an artist has a catalog that's earning royalties, yes, we can. That's how we do all of our listings. But it has to fit within our framework before we can go up with it. How is the ownership documented and what are the risks of fraud and what happens if royalty exchange is no longer in business? So we've covered most of that. Risks of fraud are extremely low. I mean, we've done almost 3,000 transactions at this point, and I think I can count on one hand the number of instances of fraud. So, we're talking about 0.01% or 0.02% of transactions experience fraud. So super, super rare because our diligence is so stringent. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know, Rob, if you have anything to add to that, but it's pretty rare.
Nope, nope.
Um, what is the business of investing in music royalties, phonograms, and music publishing? Which of these three is the most profitable? I mean, I'm not sure any one is more profitable than another. Most people like publishing because it's the composition side rather than the sound recording. And by that, we mean the music and lyrics as written. So it does technically earn from a wider swath of usages. Um, but they're both profitable. It really depends on the artist and how that does. So, how many artists have sold future royalties through you? I mean, thousands. Worked with thousands of artists. I could not tell you the number. Thousands. How are revenues calculated? Are they platform streams? Are they also physical media, vinyl sales? What happens if a film? Yeah, so different royalty streams will have different royalty rates. Like for example, a sync, which is when music is placed in a film, that's going to have a flat fee that's paid to the rights holders, and then it will also generate royalties from the plays of that film. So a number of different ways. Physical sales will also contribute to royalties, but that's typically a pretty low number these days since we're in really the digital age. For streaming, generally, the way royalty revenue is calculated is based on a percentage of the revenue earned by the streaming service, right? So Spotify earned X dollars from streaming. A percentage of that goes to the royalties, and then it's split up by the consumption of the various songs. That makes up that pie. That's roughly how it works. Are royalties depreciable? If so, only by certain occupations or by individual investors. Life of rights are only term length. Term length. They are depreciable. We were talking a bit before about amortization strategies, and you can apply them to any term length. Just keep in mind that, for a fixed term, obviously you're going to have a set amortization schedule that you can apply to that versus life of rights, you can be a bit more flexible. Um, so take a look at that amortization blog post we have. I'll see if I can post it in the chat here before we conclude. Um, but yes, they are depreciable, and that can give you tax advantages to take advantage of. I am new to this and want to begin slowly. How safe is this type of investment? Well, all investments inherently carry risk. Um, so, be mindful. Um, what we see generally is that the older a catalog is, the lower the risk profile is because the earnings are more consistent, more established. Of course, it's an imperfect science, so do your due diligence to make sure that you're comfortable with it. but that's a good rule of thumb to start with. And then, expand your understanding of the asset class from there. AI issues, we've covered that ad nauseum. How do you start investing on a shoestring budget? Depends on what you consider a shoestring budget. We've talked about the minimum uh, quite a bit here, so I think that's covered. Can the catalog purchased by the investor be administered by the investor or their preferred partner, not royalty exchange? No, we do not currently allow for that. Um, there may be some rare instances where um, a catalog is required to be collected directly, but again, super rare. Um, we act as the administrator for everything so that we can effectively manage the platform. It's an important part of the whole puzzle, ensure everyone's getting paid correctly, everything's moving where it's supposed to be. Trust us, you do not want to have to reach out to Universal and get them to handle the assignment for you. You will have a bad time, I promise you. Um, we handle all that stuff. Let us do it. It's going to make your life 1,000 times easier. Can you please tell us the methodology as to how an artist onboards and how do you set bids for their catalog? Does an artist have a say in how much he wants to place his bids for? Yeah, the artist will have full control over the listing. We'll obviously lend guidance and advice, um, but you would have, or the artist rather, would have the ultimate say in accepting a price. Um, if you have more questions about selling, reach out to our artist relations managers. They can talk you through how all that works. Uh, next one here. Um, we've supported you for many years now with our investments. What exit plans are you working on? I think this is about investing in Royalty Exchange as a platform. So, Rob, I don't know if you have any words of wisdom there.
Yeah, I think that question is probably better suited for a an investor shareholder meeting.
Okay, cool. Next one here, does Royalty Exchange offer guidelines to listers and how to price listings? Yes. As part of the sale process, you would have a dedicated artist relations manager like we just referenced. They would help you. Part of that would be a evaluation of the catalog and what we expect it would sell for, things like that, the marketplace median pricing. You get the full rundown. What is the impact of generative AI music creation, for example, Suno, on the value of rights traded on your platform? So far, nope, not really much of an impact. Again, we'll kind of see how these platforms end up impacting things. Presumably, assuming that the AI licenses fairly compensate, it should help. But again, we'll have to see. Um, Last one here. How does Royalty Exchange actually function? What is the minimum budget to start with? We function as a marketplace, plain and simple. So we provide the offerings, all the information that you need for investors like you to acquire these assets. That is our function, is to maintain a safe marketplace for everybody. Um, and we talk about the minimum bunch. Okay, and that's all our submitted questions. If there's any last questions for those of you who are still here, now's the time. I'm going to pull up that amortization blog post that we have and post it for you all. Give you a chance to formulate any last questions. All right. I know you've answered this, but if supposedly a really popular artist like Bruno Mars wants to release publishing rights for its unreleased songs, would you help him place bids? No. If it's not earning royalties, we will not look at it. We have no way to evaluate it. We are not A&Rs. We look at the financials specifically. If there are no financials, we cannot look at it. Okay. Tom, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Um, yeah, happy to hop on a more direct call too, if that's helpful. I just posted in the chat for everyone the link to that amortizing royalties. If you want to take a look, it gives some examples of discounted cash flows and things and straight line versus income forecast methods that you can use for amortizing. Um, so that should help with that. Uh, Last call for questions here, and then we're going to conclude this webinar. Again, thank you all for attending. Um, Always nice to see a bunch of faces here and always nice to hear your questions. If you have more questions that occur to you after we wrap up here, you can reach us at investors@royaltyexchange.com. Um, Once again, my name is John Gestel. I'm Investor Relations here at Royalty Exchange. Rob Bernhard with me. He's our corporate counsel. Um, so last call for questions. Going once, going twice. Can you share any insight into the typical seller's method of evaluating offers? That's a good question. The way that we talk to sellers about reviewing offers is we encourage them to engage. Engagement from a seller says that they're actively looking to sell, and that's obviously a positive. Um, what you will see a lot of it is sellers will use a list price as a way of countering all investors. So pay attention to list price changes too. And then I would encourage you to keep making offers, even if an offer expires. Showing that sustained interest is also important for a seller. Otherwise, they'll get, kind of fatigued with the listing and maybe less inclined. But if they see that there's still consistent interest, that encourages them to come back and negotiate. Um, so continue to make offers on something that you're interested in to encourage that seller to negotiate with you. Um, Understand that a lot of these artists do have an emotional tie to their work. It's their life's work or whatever. Um, and so sometimes it will take time for them to kind of understand how the market works and, the market value of their catalog. So it can be a bit of an evolution as far as, price discovery and reaching an ultimate deal. So persistence is key. Um, and yeah, engagement. Engagement is really the name of the game. If people see engagement, it encourages activity, and that's how deals are done. I hope that helps answer. Okay, any others? Yep, you got it, Casey. Okay. If there are no other questions, we're going to wrap this up here. Again, thank you all for attending. Have a great rest of your day. Let us know how we can help. It's what we're here for.